What's going on YouTube? It's Dubpace here, and this is my Scarlet Monastery Cathedral one pull beginner's guide. If there's anyone else out there like me, I struggle so much to learn these complicated pulls. This video is split up into 4 main sections, and I have posted the timestamps to each of these sections in the description below. The first section, we're going to watch a textbook perfect example of a flawless SM Cath one pull, and I will describe everything that's happening in real time just so that you know my exact thought process and the timings of everything during a perfect run. Next, we're going to look at 3 common pitfalls that happen. These are the 3 main reasons that I wipe during each run, and hopefully I can help you know what to do when stuff starts to go wrong. Third, we're going to be looking at the gear that I use, and I will provide general guidelines for the gear that you should be using when you begin learning this power level. And lastly, we'll take a brief look at the talent spec that I'm using and some of the key talents and why they are necessary to be able to do this farm successfully. All right, and without further ado, let's jump right into the pull itself. You'll notice that before I pull, I do kill the very first mob that spawns right in the instance, and before you start, I always cast Mana Shield and Ice Barrier before you begin. And here we go. You begin by running through the 2 mobs in the front, rank 1 Arcane Explosion, get these 4 mobs grouped up, and Frost Nova. First blink timing coming up right now. You blink to the fountain, skip everything else, and hug the edge of the fountain here so that you can easily get up on the edge of the stairs. Sometimes you need to use this technique to avoid mobs. Once you jump up on the fountain, recast your Ice Barrier, recast your Mana Shield, recast your Frost Ward, and blink. Use no mana and open the door. It takes 5 seconds to open the door, and that's how long it takes for your mana to begin regenerating as well. You're going to move in here. I target one of the back mobs, turn, use Counterspell, rank 1 Arcane Explosion to grab what you can, and Frost Nova timing coming up right there. Frost Nova those mobs, 1 more Arcane Explosion, and blink. This is one of the most technical parts. Turn, rank 1 Cone of Cold, Ice Barrier. I use my Mana Ruby there. I recast Frost Ward. I make sure that Mana Shield is up, and make sure you are jumping exactly where I am jumping. This is the exact path that you want to take. Second blink timing coming up right here. Blink directly down the stairs, hug the wall down the stairs, rank 1 Arcane Explosion to make sure that you're not going to miss any mobs, and continue running. Do not blink when it comes up off of cooldown here, but make sure that you are keeping your Ice Barrier cast as much as you can. Ice Barrier timing should be now. This is perfect. So far, this is a very perfect run. Right when you turn the corner here, you need to blink right away. You see there was mobs catching up to me from behind, and now we're going to hop the corner, go up around the side of these stairs, the opposite side that we originally approached on, and we're coming up to the safe spot here. The safe spot is going to be this very specific square. I'll pause. Boom. This right here, this is the safe spot. On the very last set of columns, the middle square, if you stand in here, this is an amazing tip to know, because when you stand in the safe spot, all of the mobs behind you are going to bug out, and you have 10 seconds to do whatever you want. So if you took some unnecessary damage during that time, this is a really good time that you can bandage up, get some extra health. You'll see that I was at 60% mana, which is actually okay, but just to be safe, I'm using my Evocate cooldown to get a little bit of extra mana as well. I'm going to Evocate back up to full, and then Frost Ward, jump off, make sure you don't let the mobs reset here. Look at the casters, let all of them start casting, then blink to get out of range so those frost bolts don't go off. On the very last mob, reapply your Ice Barrier, reapply a fresh Mana Shield, make sure Ice Barrier and Mana Shield are as fresh as possible, line up for a blink, and Ice Block. You do not need a limited invulnerability potion if you've done all of this correctly. You're going to spam Frost Nova when you're ready to get out. You blink away, Mana Shield, I'm also going to Frost Ward, and then start with the AoE. And this is just a perfect catch with the AoE, and we're going to be jumping up and down on the fountain. Let the blizzard go full length. Right on that corner edge of the fountain is where you want to keep placing your blizzards. And then I'm even going to break it early. I've got plenty of time on my mana. The mana is no issue. I've got plenty of casters casting on me. Everything is all good. We're going to hop up and down, back and forth, keeping those mobs around that little U-turn there on the fountain over and over and over. This will likely be my last blizzard here, because once stuff gets to be very low health, it's usually better to run in Cone of Cold, Arcane Explosion, and finish off the rest of the mobs that didn't get killed by all of the blizzards. In particular, the mobs inside of the cathedral, you need to look out and ensure that you interrupt if any one of them is high health and casting a heal, and then finish off the casters last. The casters pose the least threat, since you typically will resist everything that they are casting at you. Alright, before hopping directly into the gear that you should be using, I want to go over what goes wrong when you're doing the SM Cath 1 pulse. The number one thing is that the casters either cast Frostbolt on you, which is not a huge deal, or they cast Slow on you, which is a huge deal. If Slow gets cast on you, I suggest that right away you immediately use your PvP trinket. You'll see here, this is an occasion where I do get slowed. If you watch my debuffs right here underneath my buffs, I do get slowed, and I immediately PvP trinket out of it during this run. Usually when you get slowed and you don't resist it, it's just bad luck. Don't beat yourself up. It's not a big deal. Don't panic. Make sure you have a comfortable hotkey for your PvP trinket, and PvP trinket right away. What is extremely unlucky and will wipe you is when you get slowed twice in one run. If you've already used your PvP trinket and you get slowed again, this is an occasion where I run this hundreds of times. It happened to me here. I panicked, tried to use Frost Nova, tried to claw my way to a safe spot, whatever I could do, but it was all over. There's nothing I could do, even tried to potion, and I went down, died right there. Okay. So now you know that the most dangerous thing that can happen to you is if you get slowed by one of the casters. But I did want to show some footage of what happens when you get frostbolted. I do suggest that if you can, don't use your PvP trinket if possible. So right here, I did just get frostbolt applied. I just kept trucking, jumped down, got a little bit of distance by cutting that corner. If you don't have terrain to allow you to be able to do something like this, just use Frost Nova or use a rank 1 Cone of Cold, turn quick, just to get a little bit of space. You shouldn't need to use your PvP trinket. If you can save it, save it. Alright, so I just went on a deep dive to find this footage because there's one more thing that very frequently can wipe you. Quick note, I did just have to use my PvP trinket there because I got slowed. But the problem is, sometimes when you come out of your ice block and you Frost Nova, some of the mobs have a chance to resist your Frost Nova. If you do have some mobs resist your Frost Nova, my best advice is, number one, do not panic. I just cast Mana Shield, I cast Frost Ward, you see those mobs are coming towards me, I just proceed as normal. They'll hit on you a little bit, they'll get slowed by your ice armor, and when your blizzard is ready, you just hop right up on the fountain, and the mobs that did not get Frost Nova'd will just join up with the full pack of mobs that did get Frost Nova'd at this point. The only caveat is that if a defender is one of the mobs that gets resisted and it gets close to you, a defender can spell lock you. One cute trick to get out of spell lock is that you can use Cold Snap if you have it up to get out of the 10-second spell lock and get right back to business. Okay, really quick before I dive deep into the gear that you want to be using for the SM Cath 1 pull, I just want to say I've spoken with many people about doing this power level, and it seems to be a frequent attitude where people say something like, I don't have the gear to start that now. I want to do it later. And that is a valid thing to say. But when I dig deeper and I ask, well, what gear are you waiting for? Sometimes I'll get responses about MC loot that they're next in line for, or BWL loot. They have purples in their head, and they're thinking that the purples are going to make it easy for them to do this farm. And I just want to dispel that notion, because this is a very technical, fundamental based power level, and I'm willing to wager that there are definitely people out there that can do this farm probably even naked, because they have such a strong fundamental understanding of how to do the power level. So don't fall into that trap. Just try to get the gear to get up to the baselines that I described and go from there. So in general, you want to be trying to get either frost resistance gear, which there is a good cloak that's easily farmable out of UBRS from the beast. There is the engineering trinket that is extremely useful if you have engineering, and you could use that instead of the Frostwolf insignia in conjunction with your PvP trinket. And then there is also the frost resistance wand that drops off of one of the Ziggurat bosses in Undead Stratholme. So in addition to the frost resistance items, you also want to just be stacking high intellect and decently high stamina. I would say that a baseline for these three stats, try to have at least 50 frost resistance with ice armor cast. Try to have about 3,000 health unbuffed, and try to have probably around 5,500 to 5,800 mana self-buffed with Arcane Intellect. Those are really nice baselines. If you have 50 Frost Resist, 3k health, 5.5k mana, and then the PvP trinket, I think you're going to be perfectly fine for this farm. All right, before I jump deep into the talent tree really quickly, I will say I'm putting 2 links into the description below. One is a direct link to what the talent spec is on the Wowhead talent calculator, and the second is a link to another YouTuber, Arlius. I hope I'm saying his name correctly. This guy makes terrific mage power leveling guides, so go check him out. And I got this exact talent spec for the SM Cath Arm 1 pulse from his video, one of his videos. So go check him out. All right, let's very quickly go over the talents that you should be using. This is one of the easiest things to do because all you need to do is just copy the talent tree exactly. But I'll talk about some of the key talents. We do 14 points into the arcane tree, we do 0 points into fire, and then we go deep into the frost tree with 37 points. Just very quickly, I'll scroll through and show the key talents here. I will also put a link to this exact build in the description below as well if you just want to skip this section. All right, so in the arcane tree, the most important talent that you take is magic absorption. This is so necessary because it makes it that every time that you resist one of the frost bolts that gets cast on you during the SM1 pull, you restore 5% of your mana every time that you resist. That's why you need to take this talent no matter what. Otherwise, you're going to run out of mana. In this spec, you also take Arcane Resilience for the extra amount of armor, which does prove to be useful. And then in the frost tree, it's all pretty typical. You don't want to take frostbite because you don't actually want the targets to be getting randomly rooted into place when you're trying to kite them back and forth on the fountain. You don't take improved frostbolt, and you don't take winter's chill. You pretty much take everything else. Like I mentioned, cold snap can be very useful to get you out of a bad situation where you get spell locked. Ice block obviously is mandatory for the entire pull, and ice barrier of course is mandatory as well. This is the exact spec, and shout out again to Arlius for this wonderful spec. I use it every time I'm doing the SM Cath 1 pulse. And that about wraps it up for this video. Please consider subscribing if you enjoyed this content, because I want to learn every mage power level that's available in Classic WoW and provide these beginner guides for each one of those dungeons. As always, thank you for your support, and I'll see you next time.